Hello, my name is Brenda Dann-Messier, and I'm Senior Advisor for ESG, and I'm thrilled to be able to moderate this very excellent panel today. As I mentioned, am a Senior Advisor for ESG. Most recently, I was also Rhode Island's Post-Secondary Commissioner, and prior to that, I worked for the Obama administration for 5 years as the Assistant Secretary for the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education. Promise policies seek to leverage higher education as a mechanism for improving the lives of all Americans. In today's fast paced and interconnected world, it's more important than ever to break down silos and make sure that every stage in the student life cycle, from cradle to career, is working together to support positive academic and career outcomes in order to increase access and equity in higher education. The K-12 system must be incorporated to set a strong foundation for a student's future success. The goal of this session will be to look at how promise programs move into the K-12 space to give students a head start, preparing for a variety of pathways and futures. We will speak with our expert panelists about topics like counseling and coaching, dual enrollment, the social, economic, and everyday realities facing students, and how their respective organizations aim to support these student communities. Let me now turn to two distinguished panelists, Michelle Lair and Russell Fraenkel. I'm going to ask them to briefly introduce themselves and give us a 2-minute overview of their organization and explain how their Promise program works with high school students to help them get a jump start into workforce preparation. Michelle, would you start, please?
Absolutely. Brenda, thank you so much for that little introduction and giving us a kickoff here today. I'm so pleased to be here. I, again, am Michelle Lair, and I work with the North Carolina Community College System Office, where I serve as the Career and College Promise CTE, or Career and Technical Education Coordinator. In short form, what that means is I have the great pleasure of working collaboratively with our partners in the state, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, to offer to our students all across the state of North Carolina our dual enrollment program, which is called Career and College Promise. That program affords students in our K-12 system an opportunity to get that jump start that you mentioned before, Brenda. We bring those programming to students as early as ninth grade, beginning with opportunities to participate in career and technical pathways, as well as college transfer pathways. We also have what we call in North Carolina cooperative innovative high schools, which are a strong collaboration, again, between ourselves, the community college system, and the Department of Public Instruction, where we offer specific high schools that are catered to dual enrollment students that, again, allow students to begin as early as ninth grade, engaging in coursework, working towards those credentials that are going to ultimately help them transition from high school into their career or to college.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Russell, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your organization?
I will, Brenda. Thank you so much. And I want to just say hello to the audience and tell you how grateful I am to be able to speak with you today. My name is Russell Fraenkel. I work with the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities System. It's about 53 campuses in the state of Minnesota. And I work for a Center for Information Technology, and our role is really to prepare people for a career in some type of technical field. And so I happened to kind of fall into that field, frankly, when in 2009 I lost a job as a community education administrator. So I worked in the K-12 system for 30 years. And I started doing some consultant work. And of course, Career Pathways was such a big, it was really the beginning of this whole notion of how do we all work together to assist people to get to in-demand jobs. And that was really, really big for me personally, was to kind of find my new way. And I just was fortunate to do some consultant work and then find that there was a real need to do outreach work to high school students in particular. to get them interested in technology jobs and to prepare them for this exciting field. And so that's my background.
Well, as our audience can see, we've got two outstanding panelists, and I have a number of questions I'm going to ask each of them. And Michelle, I'll start with you. You'll both answer the same question, but I'm going to start with you, Michelle. Um, Across the nearly 360 Promise programs around the nation, there are a number of different programmatic models. Your programs are unique in that you prioritize early intervention for workforce training. And Michelle, you said you start as early as the ninth grade, and that you prioritize the interventions for workforce training, specifically providing career opportunities for high school students through dual enrollment and other opportunities. Why was this program design choice a priority for your program and the students you serve? And more importantly, what outcomes have you seen? Michelle, would you start, please?
Sure. I think that in the state of North Carolina, first of all, I would say, similar to many states across the country, have been offering dual enrollment programs for a while. They've taken on different forms and so forth. But in our state, in North Carolina specifically, our legislature, and I think very graciously, recognized the need for keeping the pipeline from school to career filled with very skilled, very educated folks. So, as a way to do that, dual enrollment is one of the opportunities that are afforded to our students in the state to give them that chance to get those skills, to gain those the credentials, get the education they need to help with that pipeline. As we all know, we are all in an ever-changing environment as far as our workforce is concerned. We've got lots of challenges. One being very quickly aging workforce. With the changing demographics, um, we've got roles to fill, quite frankly. And this particular program allows students to begin interacting with those career pathways very early. We work very hard and collaboratively with our DPI partners, Department of Public Instruction partners, to offer articulation opportunities so that students can transfer or articulate rather that credit that they may have earned in high school from career and technical courses over to us, and then just continue on in that pathway, completing that coursework to ultimately earn that credential. So again, I think North Carolina was very purposeful, and I'm assuming that many states across our country are facing the same challenges with a workforce that we need persons to fill. And this opportunity just allows our students to get that quick jump start. And here again, building those bridges from high school into college, allowing that articulated credit to come with them, just helps them all the more.
Michelle, can you talk a little bit about your outcomes? Are they accepting the articulated credit in their chosen career field? Can you talk a little bit about that process, please?
Absolutely. So, outcome wise, outcomes are big, right? Obviously, for us, in regards to the funding, we certainly want to be good stewards of the monies that have been allocated by our legislature to help bring this program to our students. So, as a part of that, we actually have an annual report that goes out to the legislature each year, very transparent. There are specific outcomes that we're looking at. Among those, course completion, success rates in courses, credential completion, quarterly earnings for our students is an outcome as well. So that's just a part of that, and we've got a very elaborate data dashboard system that has been established. That's again very forward facing, front facing for anyone to see, very transparent. And I could just share with you in particular a couple of the sort of high points of some of those outcomes. One that we're very proud of is our success rate for those students in those courses. So every year, annually, traditionally, and historically, we have seen our students outperforming our traditional students in those courses in terms of their GPAs. We have seen those students continually outperform our traditional students as well in terms of credential attainment. We had, gosh, probably well over 5,000, 5,500 credentials earned in the past year from students. So they're gaining those credentials, they're getting those skills, and they're entering the workforce. The quarterly earnings data that we also capture is continuing to rise, and that specific data point looks at students who are not enrolled in post-secondary, post-high school. So we're assuming that those students completed that credential and have now gone on into the workforce with that credential in tow. And we do look back at the quarterly earnings for those students. And again, we've seen increases in the amount of income those students are able to earn, with those credentials coming out. So to me, the outcomes sort of speak for themselves. And again, very transparent. So I'd be happy to share that information just to connect people to that data, so that you can sort of take a look at some of the things we've been able to see our students accomplish.
That sounds wonderful and very impressive. And thank you for your willingness to share that information. Russell, I'm assuming because you had such an extensive background in the K-12 system that the connection with K-12 was natural for you in terms of your Promise program and making sure that there was a very deliberate partnership between K-12 and higher ed. Would you be able to talk a little bit about the design of your program and also the outcomes, please?
Well, let me say this. Yes, I think that as I think back on the beginning of my work, and I've been in this space about 10 to 12 years now, what was early sort of recognized is that teachers in the K-12 system are really, really busy. And you have to be able to demonstrate to them or show them that you're going to ideally make their job easier than more complicated. And so everything we have done is involves them in the creation and in the design, but it also recognizes that we want to put in their hands curriculum, resources that they're going to find of great value immediately to work with students. And so we have, for instance, a no-cost IT exploration curriculum that they can access and use. We provide them free training. We provide them free support. So there's a variety of things that we have done by design intentionally to just make their lives easier. And what we recognize, especially in this particular field, is that there are a lot of teachers who are not comfortable teaching, for instance, computer science principles. They're not necessarily licensed in that field. They might feel that students know more than them. And that's a myth. Actually, they might be able to use a device better, but they might not really know how to be creative technologists and all that kind of stuff. So what we do is we basically created a curriculum, an example where they can easily use the portal. We provide them with activities. We sort of have a guiding approach to it. It's aligned to standards. There's all kinds of things that make their life simpler and frankly satisfy some graduation requirements that are there as well. And ultimately kind of lead students to, to really an in-demand career, right? And give them all the right stuff and all the essential information they're going to need and the skills they're going to need to really get that internship or whatever it is that's going to make a difference for them to actually step into the field in the shortest amount of time possible, right?
Can you talk a little bit about the outcomes, though, from your specific work?
I think we're getting better at outcomes, in the sense that we have people who are, for instance, using this curriculum. We now know who it is that's using it. We know what the students, we're getting better at understanding how the students view the value of the curriculum. We're tying the curriculum to, for instance, college and career preparation. And so, for instance, when a student comes into it and they're sort of looking at, uh, is this a career interest of mine? Is this an educational path I'd like to pursue? The obvious questions for them is, well, how quickly can I enter it? What's the path to it? What kind of roles are they interesting? Are there people like me who um, that look like me that are doing this kind of work? And that's a big one. Are we, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're a person of color, and and if you see someone like me that's trying to tell you that this is a great career path for you, you're probably less likely to believe me than if somebody that looks like you. So those are all the things that I think we're doing, and we're finding success in helping people not only get into the field and begin their study, but to start to come engaged with people who not only they can identify with, but also can then support them along the entire pathway. So we're finding really tremendous outcomes in that strategy, and getting people um, to the chosen sort of real high level engagement stuff, which is, I want to get an internship while I'm in high school. And then what we found is when we do that, is then they go off to college somewhere, and the ultimate sort of prize is, oh, I got invited back for an internship now that I'm in college, because that sets someone obviously on the pace for, I might even, well, not only may I end up in that job in that with Land O'Lakes or with SPS Commerce or Optum or whomever, um, if I don't get on board with them, I'm going to have all the right credentials and the right connections and the network to find a job somewhere, be it that in Minnesota or somewhere else in the nation.
That's excellent. Thank you. I'm going to stay
Yeah.
with you. I'm going to stay with you, Russell, to ask you
Okay.
the second question. Um, every community has unique labor market needs, and you know this, and
Yes.
those needs have shifted now during the pandemic. What are the biggest labor market needs you see in your community? And does your program specifically, you do because you're in technology,
Sure.
target training for occupations that are in high demand? So you talked about that. Um, if you would talk a little bit about that, what's the impact been in the pandemic in the technology field? I know that, do you feel like that's still in demand locally? Do you determine that by real time labor market data? Is that verified by the employers in your community? If you could talk a little bit about how you talk to your students about the need for IT careers based on labor market data.
Well, certainly, it's really important to have a really um, well informed, or I should say, data informed decision around how do we prepare students for real jobs, and that labor market information that we get from DEED, which is our um, kind of the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. So that's a starting point for us. And then certainly we have relationships with all kinds of people in industry who work with us on these awards programs and a variety of other competitions and other things that um, help us design those programs, and then they're engaged in them, and they're by, in essence, they're they're indicating what it is that the kind of skills that they are seeking in these students. And so we use a combination of those ways to get at students, prepare them, and keep them sort of connected and engaged along the way.
Are
I
you?
will I
Oh,
will say, well, I will say with COVID,
yeah.
that's been a really disruptive challenge for us. But in many ways, beyond the challenge itself, it has really opened up a number of innovative opportunities. So I'll just use an example from last summer. We had a number of in-person experiences that we used to have for girls in high school, young women in high school. about, and I'm going to say about 60% of them young women of color, in which we would have job shadow experiences, we would have internships, we would have all kinds of engagement opportunities that existed. And so COVID comes along, all of a sudden those experiences are really challenged. Can we still do those? And so what we shifted to is, for instance, we call this, it's a mentor mash experience in which it became virtual. Now, instead of a job shadow in person, all of a sudden we had maybe 20 students who were matched up with women in the field, and it became a 6-time thing over the course of the summer, for instance, where they would be mentored by women in the field. And that was all a guided exploration, a guided connection with all kinds of resources for that relationship to be the best it could be, right? Beyond that, you have this notion of, we had 20 sort of internships set up for young women, and we had 10 different businesses offering those. And what we settled on was 3 of them said, you know what, we're going to proceed and we're going to go forward with a remote work experience. And so 7 of those 20 were allowed the opportunity to have a remote job experience. Now, what we found in that is the 3 businesses were guided, and I was able to bring those 3 businesses together in a cohort in which we're learning from each other about how to do that work effectively with students, right? Well, now we have outcomes from that. We've shared those with the broader audience, and now we have a number of other businesses who have said, if COVID should continue, and we all know it is, and there's a decent chance that maybe we won't be able to do in-person work or in-person internships in this coming summer, we're going to be better poised to deliver a really high quality experience. And so that's the type of thing that I think we had to make adjustments to. But what I'm finding, and this is a great example of it, this interview is a great example of it. We're all getting better at the use of technology. The production side of this technology is really, really improved. I'm getting more comfortable with being able to produce a better outcome. And we know many teachers have been put in a position, both in high school and at faculty level in college, to just deliver a better experience using interactive media and a variety of other software tools to really pull off a great experience.
Thank you.
And that's the innovation side, right?
Right. Great.
And, yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
I really appreciate how responsive you've been able to be to make sure that your students still have full access to a lot of the opportunities that you had designed for them.
Yes.
Michelle, can you talk about how your labor market needs have changed in North Carolina due to the pandemic? And how are you responding in terms of training programs that are going to enable your students to secure employment in fields that are in demand? How do you do that? Do you use labor market data to help them make that decision? Do you use information from the employer community? Are you seeing some sectors that are expanding, some that are staying stagnant, and some that are really are not going to be as robust as they might have been? And how has that changed your approach in North Carolina to your training programs and the work that you do with your students, just because of the shifts in the labor market? We know that there have been dramatic shifts. So what does that mean for you and your students?
Great question. And yes, COVID has definitely been a disruptor for us all, but I continue to say that I think it's a positive one. I try to stay positive about it because I do think it's forced us to be innovative, maybe quicker than we want it to be innovative, but that's positive in my.
It's positive.
It's a positive. So Some of the things as far as the labor market, one of the beautiful things about the community college system in general, and definitely specifically in North Carolina, is our ear is always down at the ground level, understanding what the needs are in the workforce in our communities all across the state. We have 58 community colleges in the state, 100 counties we're serving in the state, and the ear is always to the ground. So we've definitely seen some shifts in programs that have been submitted to us at the community college system office. They all have to come in to be reviewed and approved by our coordinators, folks like myself, and administrators over different programs. So we've seen a shift with COVID in terms of what the individual communities across our state are seeing as a need and hence are responding in terms of creating programming to help get our students skilled and ready to enter those fields. So I definitely use Department of Commerce data, NC Department of Commerce, labor market data, Indeed, and all the others that are more real time. And then obviously they're also working very closely with the employers, the local employers in their communities, who obviously know what their needs are. So all of those folks come together with our faculty to determine programs that are going to be the best fit and best serve the needs in that local economy. With that, I can tell you that probably our top few programs that we've seen in light of COVID, number one has been healthcare, for sure. Lots of programs coming through, in particular for nursing, LPNs in particular, where it typically used to be RNs. You know, everybody's wanting RNs, but now there's such a need in our communities with the different facilities that are caring for our elderly folks in our community. So we've definitely seen an uptick in healthcare needs. I would also say that another area that we've seen, especially in our state of North Carolina, has been around agriculture, agribusiness. That has been booming. Everything from viticulture, you name it, that lots and lots of things going on in the agricultural world in North Carolina. And so the programs are responding to get our students all across the state skilled and ready to enter those fields. And we're working bilaterally with four-year institutions to also help those students continue their education should they choose to build upon that in later years. If I had to pick a third, I was trying to write down third. Oh, if I had to pick a third, I would probably say our skilled labor in our advanced manufacturing would probably be another one that we're seeing an uptick in as well. And one of the beautiful things around that is we've also seen an increase in our apprenticeship programs across our state. Apprenticeship NC is another arm here at the Community College System Office that works with employers all across our state to build those apprenticeship programs to help connect our students as early as high school. And they get started as pre-apprentices and then, roll on into a full apprenticeship. It's beautiful because the students are having those costs covered. They're gaining that workplace experience. So it's really a phenomenal program. And I love hearing about those success stories and getting to work with those students. So definitely some shifts with COVID. I think our communities across the state, our community colleges with their local workforce are responding to those needs. We're getting programs in place and connecting the students in our high schools to those programs so that they can begin getting that coursework, that training under their belt. And then those apprenticeship programs, I think, are a good connector. We had some challenges with work-based learning and some challenges with clinicals and things of that sort due to COVID. I think everyone has experienced that, but to the best that we can, we're working through those challenges and just making sure that we're getting everybody, as many students as we can, ready to make that transition and to continue with their coursework and all of the training that they need to be ready for that transition.
Well, it's obvious why they selected you both to be panelists because both of you have been focused on innovation. And that's really critical, especially during a pandemic. You have to be really innovative and responsive to the changing times. And obviously, both of you are doing that. I have one final question for you, and and I'm going to ask you to start, Michelle. What are some of the best practices that you've been able to identify in streamlining the college to career pipeline?
So I would say probably the best practice is to have some very clear, very visible, very well messaged career pathways.
Mm.
Um, that's crucial. And I think that, well, one of my this is gonna sound funny, but one of the things that I've said to students for a lot of years, I've been in education a lot of years, from secondary and now and higher ed. But one of the things I've always said to them is, you're going to spend a lot more time in your life actually working in a career than you're probably ever going to spend getting yourself educated and skilled to get into it, right? And even if you add into that the training that you do all throughout to, stay relevant in your field or keep your skills, sharp, all that continuing education, add it all together, and you're going to spend 30 plus years of your life working in a career field. One of the things that I think we shortchange students on is really spending the time in those younger years to introduce them to careers and to help them understand what careers mean, how do you get into them, what skills you need to get into them, and then having that sort of laid out and stepped out for them in a way um, that is accessible to them, both as far as accessing it literally and understandable and digestible, that they can actually make those connections. And the younger we can do that, the better. So building out those pathways, I think it's crucial and a best practice. And I think the places that you've seen that some sort of intentionality around that, I think you've seen success in helping to connect students. So that would be probably the first best practice I would share. And then secondly, I would say another best practice is embracing the parents, because a lot of times we tend to forget that the parents are a part of this whole puzzle, and you have to engage them. Well, let me back up. You have to acknowledge that they're a part of the puzzle, and then you have to just take the time to engage them, because a lot of times you're educating parents just as much as you are educating the students in this whole process, for a lot of different reasons. And I won't take time to go down that road, but just recognize those parents and involve them and engage them and help walk them through the process as well, because they are the biggest influence. And nobody wants to see their child shortchanged. Everybody wants their child to be, the best that they can be. And I think it's our job to build those pathways out to help connect students to those pathways, helping parents and students understand the importance of making those connections between school and career. And I think if we can put that into practice, we'd be well on our way to getting some great things accomplished.
Thank you, Michelle. Russell, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about streamlining the college to career pipeline, but I know you also want to talk uh, in this question, address the career advising and what are some exemplary models that you've been able to use.
Okay, well, first of all, I really want to acknowledge a couple of three of my colleagues who have kind of helped me prepare for today, and that's Janice Onison, Christy Zacharias, and Wilson Garland.
It's nice of you.
And we sort of all have worked together with, and I mean within the center, but really with our partners to determine, how to figure out collectively, what's the best way for us to really be effective with students. And I would say one of the first things that we have to figure out is we have to help students, and I heard Michelle say this, we have to really help students explore. We have to help them sort of, and in the case of information technology, we have to um, sort of address the misconceptions they have about the work. Where does it occur? What kind of skills you need? We also have to help them get beyond their limited perceptions sometimes about what a career in IT is. Because frankly, if you think it's coding only and you're not into that, chances are we've lost you as as a potential career direction for you. And I would surmise that that's really true for a lot of career fields. Is if you have a limited understanding about the career field itself, it's really a disservice to you and to your ability to sort of figure out how well your interest and your passions match with what that profession offers, right? Overall. I think the next step and the related step to that has to do with navigation. And that really has to do with people who take a personal interest in you and can help you sort of sort through all of the noise, help you kind of lessen the noise so that you could sort of think about this and be the best informed you can be about directions that you can take in your career exploration. And then once you get past that, what are the steps that you need to take to get to that job, right? I think unfortunately, some students underestimate that they need to do something outside the classroom, for instance. They need to volunteer, work in something that showcases skills, participate in events, join clubs and associations, take certifications, because employers are seeking demonstrated initiative and people who possess a desire to learn and improve. And so navigators, guides, mentors can help you understand that. And they can help you take those necessary steps to set yourself apart from your peers, right? So that you get that chance. So you have that navigation side. I loved Michelle's comment about parents. We are always communicating with parents partly because it's an obligation, right? We're dealing with minors in most cases. And so we have an obligation to make sure they understand the communication and the interaction that we're having with their children. And while we're doing that, why wouldn't we, try to influence their thinking about what sort of help they can provide and what sort of opportunities exist for their children. So we offer with our partners, all kinds of exploratory experiences that will help a student discern, does that fit me? Does that speak to me? Am I excited about this? And if not, that's a great service too, right? To be able to discern, is this suits me versus it doesn't, is a big step in all of our sort of determining what's my path, where's the prize for me personally. And so the other really critical person in this whole equation obviously is the educator. They're highly influential to students. I've seen countless interviews where someone has said, the reason I came in this direction is because and what they're really saying is I had a trusted relationship with an educator or some other adult in their life who helped them discover and determine what sort of things mattered, right? And so that we do everything we can to have a really strong relationship with our educators. Like I said earlier, give them the tools they need, help them to do their job easier, and make sure that when we're recognizing students, and we do have a number of awards programs, like we work with this Aspirations in Computing Award, which is part of the National Center for Women in Information Technology. We do that on an annual basis. And we make sure that the teachers and the parents are all in that space with us in a community celebration and recognition of that young person who has really made some really incredible early achievements in their lives. Because it's a partnership, it's a community of folks who have come together to support that student to grow and become, right? And so that's the type of thing I think that really matters, that we figure out that there's an intersection where all these people exist: the student, the educator, the faculty member, the business, right? All with some similar needs, some similarity around, you're a talent, we have a demand, right? How are we going to marry those so that we have a great outcome in the end? An outcome that satisfies our business needs and one that satisfies your personal interests and your economic needs for the future. So that's what I think I get most excited about, frankly, is bringing all those people into that intersection and figuring out how we're going to do this work together on behalf of young people, because we have a responsibility to develop them, right, and help them to do that well, so that they can become self-sufficient, right? So
You
that's
know,
my excitement. That's what I get really jazzed about.
yeah, it's obvious you're passionate about that, Russ.
Yes.
And it's so important to make sure that there's strong and effective partnerships really supporting our students, and it takes the entire community to do that. I have to say, both of you have just provided our audience with so many good ideas and successful strategies that you've used that hopefully they will also incorporate in their program. So I want to thank both of you for sharing your expertise with us. But more importantly, it's so obvious, Russell and Michelle, that you have passion for this work and you want your students to succeed. And that goes a long way in making sure that they will be successful. So I want to thank both of you again for your insights and your perspectives and for sharing your experiences with our audience. It's been a pleasure talking to both of you today. So thank you very much.